Welcome to Art and Object's latest video preview. This current catalogue is simply entitled Art, and Ben Plumbly in just a second is going to explain to you how this catalogue's just a little different from some of the catalogues that we've done in the past. All of the works are currently on exhibition at Art and Object, 3 Abbey Street in Newton, of course, until this coming Thursday. Now the auction commences at 6 o'clock. We've got a large catalogue, so the auction commences at 6 o'clock this coming Thursday. And we look forward to seeing you over the next couple of days during the viewing prior to the auction. Now Ben and myself are going to talk about some of the interesting works in this current catalogue. Stephen Bambury is widely regarded as one of New Zealand's leading abstract artists and has been exhibiting for some decades now. Necessary Correction number 7 from 1995 is really a classic example of Bambury's program. And in this particular case, what we have is Bambury making a connection to a very important point in New Zealand art, which is Colin Mccann's Necessary Protection series of the early 1970s. In effect, what Bambury is saying with this beautiful work is, let's not just think of Colin Mccann as a citizen of New Zealand. He's very much a citizen of the world in terms of his importance, in terms of the conversations he was having. But I think when we look at this work, we don't want to just be stopped in seeing this as a discussion about art in the terms of Mccann, international painting. We have to now come back from that moment, the 1970s, and indeed come back from the beginnings of abstract art and look at Bambury's achievement. Having summarised all of those discussions, I think one of the strengths of this work is that Bambury makes this motif his own.
I think there are many artists or periods of artwork which really stand out among 1990s New Zealand art history. And John Poulet's extensive body of work based around Niue and Tapa is certainly one, and this is an absolutely fabulous example. The wonderful thing about Poulet's paintings, I think, is the way that they tell stories. The narrative quality of them is so fantastic and so interesting. There's pockets of narrative punctuated throughout these green sections, everything from lovemaking to more traditional Niuean forms, and this wonderful kind of figure ground ambiguity plays out. And these are punctuated by these geometric forms in a more traditional sort of sepia tone. And what you get between the two is this wonderful story, which I guess the viewer must really fill in the gaps.
This sumptuous painting from 2005 by New Zealand artist Liz Moore is entitled Colleen. And it is a classic example of the confectionery-like fantasies that Liz Moore creates. What we have here is one of Liz Moore's favourite motifs, which is the statue of Pania in Napier, which is familiar to generations of New Zealanders. And what Moore has done is conflate a direct and personal portrait of an individual with the iconic and emblematic sculpture of Pania. And here she is floating on a cloud in a sea of pink. It really reminds me almost of a kind of a 1940s Esther Williams Hollywood musical. The application of the paint is absolutely exquisite. And so you are really invited with this work to admire and inspect the idiosyncrasies of the paint handling from a virtuoso artist. A very knowing and referenced take, a modern view on the presentation of the nude, which again has been a subject for millennia in art. What we have here is a poetic exploration of visual phenomenon as Colum builds up exquisite layers of paint and then removes them, so that we get a sense of the passage of time, we get a sense of the craft of the artist working with the sparest of materials. He's a much celebrated artist, a Turner Prize finalist, and his work is in all the major international collections. And this is a work that I think operates at two very specific frames of reference in terms of your relationship as a viewer to the work, which is up close and personal, where you can examine the simplicity but also the discipline of the paint application, and then at some distance from the work where the physicality, the relationship of these blocks of pigment operate in quite a mesmerizing way.
For those of you that have taken the time to go through the catalogue, either online in hard copy form, you'll notice that it's not a usual important paintings offering. I think there's some 219 lots. So for whatever reason, and there's a few, we've decided that we wouldn't edit it right down like we normally do and have 50 or 60 lots. Rather, we'd present a broader survey overview with works at all ends of the market and all different types of mediums. But one of the things in the sale which really provides the sale with some guts, which really kind of is among the most impressive painting that we've handled, is this wonderful Don Binney painting from 1962. It comes at a time in Binney's career which is of crucial importance, really. 1961 to 1963, he produces a body of work based around the Pipi Whararoa. And for the first time, Binney's birds, those iconic birds which have come to define his career, rightly or wrongly in many ways, come into full view, into full flight. This painting has come from a wonderful couple, a couple who came to be in possession of it by the very fortunate fact that their parents knew Don Binney well, purchased this painting directly from him, from his studio. So it's the first time it's ever come to market. It's in beautiful condition, and it's still presented in the original frame that Don would have put on it back in the day. It's a work entitled New Paintings, and effectively it's an exhibition poster for a work that Mccann held at the Cellar Crafts Gallery in Dunedin. Beautifully inscribed across the top with the title of the exhibition, and then running through are these key series of Mccann's works from the early 1970s that are obviously on show. So we've got the Helensville and Kyprofats, both large-scale watercolours of Auckland's west coast there while Mccann was living in Muriwai, the days and nights in the wilderness, and the necessary protection. So inscribed out quite literally, but at the same time we have these wonderful abstract paintings which are so redolent of some of these series that Mccann is here advertising. So the Kyproflat series, an almost impressionistic body of work, really focusing on the different effects of light on the ocean as seen from Muriwai. And this is repeated in this work here. You've got this lovely horizon line here, this lovely green grass at the base of the landscape, and then looking out to sea, this wonderful, wonderfully chromatic, charged night sky. So really a fabulous work. Another particularly intriguing and unusual work by Colum Mccann is this painting here on my right. It's a study for a mural entitled International Air Race that Mccann was commissioned to complete between 1952 and 1953. And what's particularly lovely about this work here is really its history. The commission that Mccann was offered was for teal, latterly Air New Zealand, of course. And it was a commission, I think, that Mccann was greatly reluctant to take up for a whole variety of reasons. And these reasons were really borne out by what ultimately happened to the commission. The commission only survives today in photographic form. And it's this wonderful, large, cubist or quasi-cubist treatment of two planes flying through the sky. Now, teal was said not to be happy with the end product. They felt that the planes were too clumsy, that they weren't aerodynamic enough, or some strange reason like that. And the painting went into storage soon after it was commissioned, and several years later was destroyed. Apparently it's said to make up packing crates. Unfortunately, this wonderful work, this unique commission, now survives only through 7 or 8 studies. This is one of them.
Robert Ellis is really quite special, and that from very early on his work was urban based. And I think it's a really great time to look at this work. Just last weekend I was fortunate enough to go down to the opening of the new Wynyard Quarter, and there was a genuine sense of the Auckland cityscape, its urban environment, going through a really important change, a great sense of renewal down on the waterfront there in Auckland. So it's quite an apposite time to look at this work from 1965, where we have Robert Ellis, part of a long series of work. This is very representative of the works that he was doing at that time, fascinated by the city. So I think this is a really great example of how art can become relevant again. Now in 2011, an artist who in the 1960s and 70s was basing their practice around the form and the visual structure of the city this work now feels like there's a moment in 2011 that it's a great time to relook at a work such as this.
Attempting to hang and display 220 artworks in our Newton gallery is no easy feat. After a while, you simply do run out of wall space, and one of the ways you can treat with this is to do one of these kind of salon-style hangs. There's also something kind of wonderfully eclectic and interesting about bringing together so many different works in so many mediums. So from Richard Lewer's work here with oil stick directly onto sandpaper, through to these classic wood engravings of E. Mervyn Taylor's, forward to Michael Shepherd's still life there, through to Prince, Julia Morrison's wonderful little Dragon's Ink drawings there, Michael Harrison, Dennis Knight Turner, lovely little Peter Robinson digital print there. It really is a wall that kind of encapsulates much of 20th century New Zealand art history and proves that often great things do come in small packages.